Hello everyone, this is Shlok and this is a meme that I just stumbled upon a while ago. I thought I'd share it with you, and this is what is prompting me to make this video as well. And the goal of today's video is that we'll be understanding what Donald Trump's foreign policy stance is, what are the latest policies that he has, come up with, and most importantly, how does this impact India, and then even more importantly, how does this impact our MBA interviews. So without further ado, let's get into it. Before understanding the ins and outs of Donald Trump's foreign policy and his worldview, we need to understand the two broad political ideologies in the United States of America, and they're mainly classified into two types: the liberals and the conservatives. And the liberals are mainly associated with the Democratic Party, while the conservatives are mainly associated with the Republican Party. And if you understand the key ideologies of both of these parties, it really helps us understand on which side of the spectrum Donald Trump falls upon, and that helps us explain his policies as well, and it gives us a fundamental sort of a structure to the whole chaos. So let's get into one by one the pillars of each of these schools of thought. The first fundamental point of difference is that of big government versus small government. Now, what is big government? Big government means that liberals want there to be more government control in terms of economic regulations, social programs, and healthcare programs, and so on. And on the other hand, it's the opposite for Republicans, where they want less government control and less interference of the government as possible in matters of private citizens. So that is the first very important difference. The next fundamental difference is social progressivism versus traditional values. Now, what is social progressivism? Sounds fancy, but trust me, it does not. What that means is that liberals advocate for LGBTQ plus rights, gender equality, what else is there? Racial equality, then DEI, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion, and most importantly, reproductive rights as well. So that is one very important issue in the United States, where the liberals advocate for everyone having access to abortion rights, whereas the Republicans are something opposite to this. They do not advocate for LGBTQ plus rights. They oppose when transgender women participate in women's sports. That is something that they are against, and they are against DEI as well. And they are something which are called as pro-life. So they are basically against the right of one to have access to abortion rights. So that is one aspect that differentiates these two particular schools of thought. The next key point of difference are what kind of economic policies do both of these sides prefer. And the first very important aspect for the liberals is the fact that they want the higher tax, the wealthier individuals, in order to pay more tax. That is something that they advocate for. They are very big proponents in order to combat climate change. They want us to transition to renewable energy sources and so on. On the other hand, the conservatives, they are someone that believe in free market economics, free market capitalism, and they are someone who believe in the traditional sources, the fossil fuels and non-renewable sources of energy. And this we can also connect with the latest remarks that Donald Trump has made, where he says drill baby drill. So he wants to promote the fossil fuels industry as much as possible, and that gets us to one of the core principles that makes these two schools of thought different as well. So that's about it that I wanted to cover in terms of the number of differences. There are a lot more differences, and this video could go on for an hour, so I want to just skip all that and come down to the fact that if you think that there are such ideological differences between people, and as you can imagine, if one has a particular ideological stance, he's not going to change that particular worldview every 4 years, then how on earth does the power, the kind of people who are in power change every 4 years? And that comes down to the swing states and a lot of swing voters in these swing states, and that is how the power shifts. And it's also very much dependent upon which particular candidates come up in every new election. And we also have to look at the state of the economy. For example, if the economy is performing poorly, then the incumbent is in a lot of danger, because the public seeks to change the people in power in order to change their own economic scenarios. So that is one very important aspect, that we need to understand that this is how power changes, and many a times people do actually change their ideological stance as well. Now let's come down to the most interesting part of the video. What are the policies that have been enacted by Donald Trump ever since he's been in office for the last 3 weeks? And what is something that we must remember for our MBA interviews? So let's get into those one by one. The first tool that is used by Donald Trump is tariffs. His said tariffs is one of his favorite words. So what exactly are tariffs? And by that I mean import tariffs. So recently he announced 25% tariffs on Canada, China, as well as Mexico, even though they were rescinded just a day later. But we'll get on to that later. What are these tariffs? Let's first understand that. What import tariffs are essentially, if let's say I am a United States of America and I impose 25% tariffs on Canadian goods. Canadian goods that are coming into my country to be sold to United States consumers are going to be 25% costlier to the United States consumer. So what this does is those Canadian goods become essentially incompetitive with the United States products, which the products which have been manufactured within the United States, because they can't compete on the basis of price. So this is one aspect that Donald Trump threatens other countries with, because what this does is those countries won't be able to export their goods to the United States and make money. So this is one very important tool in his arsenal when it comes to negotiating deals. Now, why am I calling tariffs a negotiation tool for Donald Trump? This is because, as we can see, he imposed these tariffs on Canada as well as Mexico, and right after that they had certain negotiations wherein Canada as well as Mexico agreed to have stricter border control measures at their respective borders. And right after that happened, he decided to delay the imposition of those tariffs by 30 days. So essentially those tariffs were in order for Donald Trump to achieve a particular goal for his country. So that is the first thing we need to understand about how he seeks to utilize tariffs in his foreign policy. The next aspect I want to talk about is the fact that Donald Trump comes from a real estate background. He's a real estate mogul, and that is something that we can still see in his foreign policy. He has recently renamed the Gulf of Mexico as the Gulf of America. If you have Google Maps, you can scroll all the way down or all the way up to the United States of America and check out what the Gulf of Mexico is called. You can also see that he has actively talked about trying to acquire Greenland for its resources and for it being a very important place for security concerns and so on. In addition to that, he's also talked about how he wants Canada to be the 51st state of the United States of America. So he's talked about these unconventional things that mostly, that is something we haven't heard of in a very long time, this sort of expansionist policy. But that is also something that we've been seeing lately. So that is the next important aspect I've been wanting to highlight. The next part that we should be aware of is how Donald Trump has proposed in order to rebuild the Gaza Strip. He's proposed that he wants to build the Riviera of the Middle East over there, and in the meantime he wants the Gazans to take refuge in Egypt and other Middle Eastern countries. And that is something that has sparked outrage worldwide, and I am no one to comment on his particular political stance, and I'm not going to as well. But this is something that we should be aware of, that these are the things that are being proposed, and this is something that Israel supported as well, and why wouldn't they? But more on that maybe another time. So that's a little bit about his plans about the Gaza Strip. The next aspect that has been in the news almost every day ever since the last 2-3 weeks is the fact that there's a new government department, which is the Department of Government Efficiency, that is being led by Elon Musk. Now, Elon Musk, he was publicly supporting Trump before his election victory. He, I think, as far as I'm aware, he pledged about $1 million a day till the polling day. And that is something that has helped him gain the trust of the US president. And now he's one of the most, influential people in his team. And now he has been given a whole department, which is the Department of Government Efficiency. It also, the acronym of that sort of matches DOGE, which is one of the cryptocurrencies that he was involved as well, maybe a couple of years ago. So that is one very interesting coincidence, or I think it is by design. I really don't know, but that is one aspect. So what about the government Department of Government Efficiency? Now, the first part over here is what is the objective of the Department of Government Efficiency? Mainly, this department is looking for inefficiencies in the government departments, in terms of, it could be maybe overstaffing, it could be budgets that have been allocated but haven't been utilized properly, and so on and so forth. So he's already, if you call it raiding it or investigating, he has investigated agencies such as the CIA, which is the Central investigative agency or investigation agency that is sort of the intelligence wing of the United States of America. He has been looking through the Pentagon, which is basically the defense department of the United States. He's also been looking through more recently the NASA, and that is also another government department that he's been looking out into in order to detect inefficiencies, if any. Now, what is the problem over here? The first most important problem is the fact that people are stating there are problems in terms of conflict of interests. Now, what is a conflict of interest? Something that we see regularly that has been talked about in the Indian media as well. I'm taking a small example, is the fact that how doctors are prescribing certain medicines to their patients because they are getting a commission from the pharmaceutical company. So there's a sort of conflict of interest, because on one hand you are getting money from the pharmaceutical companies, but on the other hand you are prescribing medicines that may be costlier and may not be in the best interest of your patients. So that is one example of a conflict of interest. But how does this tie into the whole Elon Musk situation is something that we need to look into. So that helps us understand the kind of conflict of interest that Elon Musk has gotten himself into, because he now has the power to influence the government bodies, which are also the clients of his very own companies. So if you are both on the buyer as well as the seller side, that creates a big conflict of interest. So that is the first criticism of the DOGE department, that is a Department of Government Efficiency. The second criticism that Elon Musk and his team has been facing is the fact that how his team is like 19-20-year-old young engineers, and they do not have any kind of government experience, and this inexperienced team has access to sensitive data, and they can make huge decisions. So that is another one of those things that is being criticized the world over. The next aspect I wanted to look into is what are the main highlights of the meeting that is happening between our Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Donald Trump. And I've already read about something known as reciprocal tariffs, so you need to get to know more about that. That is the latest development in this particular story. And we also need to connect the whole tariff story with the stock market story, because tariffs sort of create an uncertain global market environment, and that has led to a lot of bloodshed in the Indian markets as well. So we need to be able to make sense of the whole story over here. Alright, so guys, that's a little bit from my side. I've attached the sources of all the things that I've talked about down in the description of this video. And if you want to have any sort of discussion, I'm more than welcome any sort of topics down in the comment section below. So that's about it, and see you in the next one.